Okay, now I'm going to be talking about what I wanted to talk about tonight, which is, does God owe us anything? Or I should say, does God owe his believers anything? Because, well, anybody who studies the Bible at all would probably come to realize that if you're not a believer as far as the Bible is concerned, then, you know, you are probably not going to have a great afterlife. I'll just leave it at that. Because the Bible clearly says, you know, only thing that can save a man from hell is belief in Jesus Christ as your Savior. Now, I went through that process or conversion, if you will, when I was 19. It was also around the time that I left the Matrix as a whole in general, which is why oftentimes I will sometimes couple it or compare it to me finding the red pill. And I did a video a little, bit ago tonight. Is the Bible red pilled or blue pilled, right? So I sort of get into that, but I wouldn't say that the Bible in and of itself is going to totally red pill men or cause them to leave the Matrix. I don't think so. My point on my video earlier tonight, is the Bible red pilled or blue pilled? Really, it's only red pilled as far as curtailing worldly female promiscuity is concerned, and promiscuity in general, as well as immorality in general. As far as everything else, it's pretty blue pilled. It really, it wants a man to work. It wants a man to be subject to the government. It wants a man to be, responsible, fiscally responsible in a familial setting. As far as family is concerned, it wants a man to live uprightly in all his doings. So a lot of that really is blue-pilled Matrix stuff inside the Matrix, right? A lot of that is really kind of be a good citizen, so you can be a good representative of God, so you can shine forth Christ on people. So be upright and be honest and be diligent worker and be a good co-worker, all these things, right? It's all blue-pilled. It's all blue-pilled stuff, right? So sometimes I'll dip into that. Sometimes I'll talk about the Bible and bring it up, and I appreciate certain YouTubers bringing it up. So on one of my videos, a guy came in and said, God doesn't owe you anything, right? So let me read I screenshotted his comments. So he says, God could have easily not created man. That's true. He could have. It's not like, if you're God, it's not like, oh, it's so difficult to create the universe. You're freaking God. You can do what you want. If I'm Michael Jordan, and someone who can't dunk is looking at me like I'm amazing, it's like I don't even look at myself, because I'm Michael Jordan. I can dunk. Or, a young Michael Jordan, whatever. He probably can still dunk, but it's not a thing. Like, I just dunk. It's what I do. I'm Michael Jordan. Like, God's not like, oh, it's so hard. We're so indebted to God for him to do something was not hard for him to do in the first place. That doesn't even make sense, right? So he's coming from this angle, almost as if we owe God something. And this is what the kind of behavior that I like to call, like, penitent, is that the right word? Penitent? Repentant, apologist, right? They're always defending God, always, oh, God's so great, God's so sick, you can never talk bad about God, ooh, like, weird, it's weirdness, right? So it's coming from that angle already, right? God could have easily not created man, therefore we should be in debt to him. Oh, really? Okay, thanks for all the stress you've given us, God. Thanks for all the turmoil, all the problems, all the suffering. Thanks. It's great. Even though you could have, because you're God, you could have created something different. You could have created an actual happy, nice, good universe, good earth that wasn't corrupted by your enemy Satan, as according to the Bible is concerned, right? You could have done that, but we're so indebted to you for all this you've put us under, right? Fuck that. Like, get out of here with that bullshit, right? Okay, he goes on, God could have easily denied mankind free will, but yet he didn't. I mean, yeah, it might have been better if we didn't have free will. Okay, so that's based on the equation that the only way for man to have free will would be for Satan to be in the Garden of Eden and to have that choice between the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. That's what you're predicating that statement on, right? But that's actually, if you use your brain, he could have done it another way. He could have said, yes, you have free will to choose me or not, but if you don't choose me, then you're not going to go to hell. You're not going to die. You're not going to suffer. Like, he could have done that. Why not? What? You still have free will. You just choose me or don't choose me. He had to do that. He had to put Satan in the Garden of Eden because it's Stockholm Syndrome. He had to create an environment for us to suffer in, or else we wouldn't need him. We wouldn't want him because we're suffering. People who want God the most are the ones who suffer the most. This is why atheist countries and countries that are very affluent, they don't want God because they don't need God. They already have all the things that they need, so they don't need God. They don't need that hope, which is why Africa's chock full of Christians, because everybody's suffering. Of course you're going to be a Christian if you're in Africa. There's no atheists in a foxhole. You are suffering, so you want God. And that's what happened to me at 19. I was suffering. I needed answers. I needed what was my life about? I wanted to know. And I found the Bible and I believed and I still believe. But it doesn't mean I don't question. It doesn't mean I don't see holes. It doesn't mean I don't I'm not rational. It doesn't mean I'm not intelligent. It doesn't mean I'm so full of faith that I throw everything out the window, that I don't take into account all the promises that he's not fulfilled, that he promised in the Bible for me specifically, or for his people in general. Right? Doesn't mean I don't think about that. It must be my fault, according to this guy, right? Because he goes on. All right, he's going to say, why do you feel like God owes you something is the real question. And I'm going to answer that. Why do I feel like God owes me something? First of all, God created us. I'm just going to pause for a second. Let that sink in. God created us, but he doesn't owe us anything? That's dumb. That's just stupid. He created us, but he doesn't owe us anything. That's just, that's like I had a pretty shitty dad. I really did. And I've talked about this before. I can be candid about this. I had a shitty dad who was there, but wasn't really there, who held down a job kind of, who was kind of sober. And I remember, and he didn't do a great job, okay? But he wasn't excruciatingly horrible, but he wasn't very good either. He was pretty bad. Okay, but at least he was more absent, at least he was more inactive than he was actively ruining my life. He inactively ruined my life more than he actively, if that makes sense, right? He was a little more passive and inactive than other dads who might physically just beat the shit out of their kids every day. That would have been a lot worse. He didn't do that, thankfully, right? But he was pretty inactive, and he went down a bad hole, and he got into alcoholism, etc. And he said to me one time, it was a few years after he moved out, and I was like 15 maybe, and I wrote him a letter, and I can't remember what I said in the letter. I just said like, I miss you and blah, blah, blah. He wrote a letter, and he said, in the letter, he said, I don't owe you anything. He said, it's not my fault. It's not my fault what happened, and I don't owe you anything. And anybody in their right mind is going to listen to that and think, what the fuck is wrong with that guy? Like, you're his father. Of course you owe him something. You owe him a good life. You owe him the time and the tools to put into him having a quality life. And it's very similar with God. God created us, therefore he owes us something. You're not going to create something or have a baby and then just say, oh, well, I don't owe it anything. Yes, you fucking do. You got to raise that baby. Dummy, dumb. You got to raise that kid. You got to take care of that kid, and you got to give that kid the tools that he or she needs to survive in adulthood. That is your job, and you damn well do owe that child something. And it's the same for God, okay? God created us. If that's not a burden of responsibility, I don't know what is. It means he's our Father, which the Bible literally says over and over again. God is our Father. God is our source, but he doesn't owe us anything according to this jerk off. You're full of shit, guy. You are out of your mind. Yes, he owes us something. Yeah, he sure as shit does. Okay? And I didn't even take the time, but you could find them. You just Google list of promises God made in the Bible, something like that. There's probably 300. There's all kinds of promises God made in the Bible to take care of his children. All kinds of them. Chock full in the book of Matthew, right? Those are some of the first things that drew me to God, was the promise that he would take care of me. You don't have any need for anything because I got your back. That's what it says in Matthew and Luke and John and Mark. Again and again. You're worth more to me than some sparrows. I'm going to take care of you. You don't have to worry about what you eat and this, that, and the third. I believed that shit. When I was 20, I believed it. Oh, I don't have to worry? Does that mean I don't have to do anything? No, I didn't look at it like that. I tried. I did my best to do all the things that I needed to do. But I looked at it like, hey, God's got my back. If the worst comes to worst, God's always got my back. That's what those verses mean to me and millions of other people. But you're saying God doesn't owe us anything? That's crazy. Crazy, man. Okay, let me go on. Now, I don't want to get too much into this, but I got to delve into it quickly. And this was part of this has always been part of my issue, is that God created us fallible. All right. He created us fallible. So you're going to create a fallible being and then put extra strong, advanced being that's clearly going to coerce and overcome the willpower of the other being in the same ecosystem. That's literally what God did. God knew that Satan was smarter, and he even said it. The snake was more that's a metaphor. The snake, who's the snake? The snake is Satan, the enemy of God. But it's all part of God's plan. You see? Satan wasn't there illegally, quote unquote. He might have been I don't know how to put it, but he's a rebel in general. In a general sense, Satan's a rebel. And rebels, in a sense, are illegal just by breathing. If you're an outlaw and you're wanted, you are illegal. Just your being free is illegal, right? If you have a outlaw and the law is trying to seek him down or whatever, and he's just out there, that's illegal. That's a problem. You want to get that person in prison behind bars. God didn't do that. He incorporated that criminal into part of his major plan. What is God's major plan in the Bible? For those who think they know what the Bible is all about, what is his major plan? His major plan is man. Man, M-A-N. Mankind is God's major central plan in the Bible. You think you're so smart. You think you read the Bible so much. What's the purpose of man? The purpose of man is to contain God. This is all throughout the scriptures. It's laid forth in Genesis chapter 3 or 2 and 3, whatever. You can eat of all the trees of the fruit of the Garden of Eden, but don't eat of the tree of knowledge. Eat of the tree of life. That's a picture. The picture of the tree of life is a representative, a metaphor for God. The tree of knowledge of good and evil is a metaphor for Satan. Literally, it was Satan who was tempting Eve to eat of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Therefore, that's the whole purpose of the Bible right there. It's called the principle of first mention. Google it. Bible scholars know what I'm talking about. The principle of first mention. It means the first thing that's mentioned and the way that it's mentioned lays forth a pattern throughout the rest of the Bible for that specific thing. If God's purpose and plan is to create man, and the purpose and plan through that creation is for man to be a container, then it makes absolute sense that God would say, eat of the tree of life, but don't eat of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Why? Because he wants man to eat of him, God, and not his enemy, Satan. Yet, you got to use your brain at the same time. That sounds nice. It's very cute and nice and lovely romance story, which is what some people call it. Some Bible scholars call it a romance story. Very nice, right? But why the hell would he put the enemy, who literally is the worst, it's the worst poison you could take in, because it literally kills you. God created Adam and Eve eternal. They weren't supposed to die. Okay, anybody who knows anything about the Bible knows that. Anybody who studies Bible scholars who knows it, mankind was not supposed to die initially. They died because Satan, as death, and this is in the book of Romans, it's in all kinds of Paul's epistles where he writes about it. Satan, as death, entered into mankind and killed mankind. And also God cursed man for partaking of the wrong tree that he told them not to do. So we're double screwed. Not only did he make us fallible, meaning Satan got the drop on old Eve. Satan tempted her, coerced her like all these men today are doing when they're sleeping with these slutty women, although who's coercing who at the end of the day, right? And she ate the wrong, and then she got Adam to eat. And Satan's being smart. He's doing the same thing today that he did back then. He corrupts the women, and then subsequently the women corrupt the men. That's what's going on today. That's what happened in the Bible. That's what's been going on for ages. For millennia. Okay, but who did all that? Who arranged all that? Who was the architect of that ecosystem called Eden? God, Yahweh, Jehovah, Elohim, whatever you want to call him, he's the one who did it. Okay, but he doesn't owe us anything. You need to rethink your whole structure, because you're all off. You probably got God as this, he's this great being, and like, come on, bro. He was a man. He walked among us as Jesus. So you could tell me that he's so great, but he picked boogers. He had to wipe his ass after he took a shit. He was a man. He had urges. He had to, or else he couldn't have died on the cross for us. It's just the difference is he was God, so he had the ability not to sin. We don't, because we're fallible, because that's the way he created us. Oh, with a free will. That's a nice caveat, man. Satan was more powerful than us, and he overtook us through his cunning, all right? But guess who allowed that to happen? God. And guess who knew that was going to happen? God. He knew that was going to happen. I don't even have time to get into why God made women the way they are. I'm going to do that for a different video. I've talked about that a little bit in the past. God made women messed up, I think, because, there's a reason for that. We can't have any happiness. You know what I mean? We can't have any peace in our life. There's always got to be some bullshit. Right? And God created it like that. So we can always turn to him and don't forget about me. I'm here, right? It's Stockholm Syndrome, man. Sorry to say, Stockholm Syndrome. But let me get back to these promises. This is kind of the crux of my point. He himself says that he owes us something, really, if you think about it. If you read the Bible, he himself says that he owes us something. All his promises, those are owings. Those are like, hey, I owe you. Those are like IOUs. All his promises, right? Not to mention, I've heard a million people, or a million preachers, a million evangelists, whatever, say that God, is like this great rich man who has this great big rich storehouse of things he wants to give us. Now, maybe those things aren't physical. Maybe those things are spiritual. Maybe those things are spiritual blessings, you could surmise, or you could say. But bottom line, he says literally in Matthew, he says, don't be worried about your food and what you shall eat and what you shall wear. And don't be worried about these things, because these things are anxiety. And these things are what the worldly people are worried about. He says, don't be worried about those things, because I'll take care of those things. He literally says that. So how is that not him owing us something? I don't understand where you're coming from, commenter. The Bible constantly alludes to us having trust in God. So if you trust someone, you kind of are in, they're kind of owing you something. Like, this gives him responsibility to fulfill his promises of caring for his people. God has a responsibility to care for his people because that's what he promised in the word, in his own word. These are his promises. How could he not care for his people? How could he not owe his people something? If they trusted in him and gave their lives to him. Some of them give up careers to serve God. Some of them give up potential great, bright futures to serve God. Many people do this. And they say, oh, my parents thought I was crazy. I've been in churches where they give testimonies and they say, my parents thought I was crazy. They thought I had this bright future and I just left it all behind and joined the church. I've heard many people say this. I was on my way to being a millionaire. I had a successful band. I had this, I had that. And they gave it up for God. So, dude, like, what are you talking about? He's got a promise and a responsibility to care for people. So this absolutely alludes to him owing us something, as do all of his promises, right? Now, I looked this up and this verse popped into my head, which does on occasion, which is that Matthew, I think it's Matthew 10:30, and it says that not a hair, he numbers all the hairs on our head. And I can't remember if this was a Bible verse or if someone just said it, but I remember this saying, not a strand of hair on our head will fall to the ground without him knowing. I can't remember if that's in the Bible or if someone just said that, but it's kind of along the same lines of that verse, Matthew 10:30. All the hairs of our head are numbered. And what that means is, I looked it up and I got this commentary. Now, Jesus declares that their Father God even knows the number of hairs on each of their heads. God cares about the smallest details of our lives. Contrary to what we sometimes imagine, God is not only concerned with the big issues we face or our victories and failures, He is aware of and involved with the tiniest matters of His children's lives. This does not mean God will always, in any cases, prevent harm or hardship, in all cases, prevent harm or hardship from coming to faithful believers. It does mean that we should not interpret difficult times as abandonment by God. So if God knows every little detail, even the hairs on your head, that kind of alludes to Him being in charge of the things that go on with your life. Probably, behind the scenes, right? So it means He arranges your environment. He arranges your disposition. He arranges the way you react. He arranges the way you react to things. That's on you, because we do have free will. One of the only smart things the guy said, and I'm going to get into a couple more of his comments here. We do have free will, which he actually says here. He says, it's funny how Christians act like God doesn't have anything to do for His people. Why do you think that? Are you giving Him plausible denial? Oh no, excuse me, that's what I said. So he says, let me just read what I said. I responded, I said, it's funny how Christians act like God doesn't have anything to do for His people. Why do you think that? Are you giving Him plausible deniability for not doing anything for people? That's what it is. You're saying, oh, well, God didn't do anything for you, so therefore it must be your fault. It's your fault God didn't do anything for you. You should have tried harder. You should have done this or that. Like, dude, what? Like, okay. I said that's a scary thing to think about, that you would be so locked into your belief system that you make excuses for Him when bad things happen. And the reason, and I want to emphasize those last three words, when bad things happen, okay? The last four words, when bad things happen, because bad things do happen, right? And who's the father of that? Who's the originator? If not a hair on our head can fall without our knowing, then God is the source of the bad things that happen. He allows the bad things to happen to us, which we see in the book of Job, which a lot of modern Christians love to quote. Job, in all his religiosity and his faithfulness to God, wouldn't curse out God for like the first 40 chapters of the book, right? He's so religious that he wouldn't curse him out. After God just allowed his family to be wiped out, Satan literally went to God and asked for to kill Job's children, and God allowed it, which is fucked up beyond all belief. And everybody acts like there's a happy ending to that story when there's fucking not. He lost his children. God allowed Satan to kill his children. What the fuck? What kind of a loving father does shit like that? I can't trust someone like that. What? That's insane. Oh, but he gave him a family. He gave him another family, so it's all good. He gave him more riches, even though he's straight. Like, what? That's bananas. That scenario literally happened in the book of Job. Satan went to God and asked. And even again in the Gospels, Jesus says to Peter, Satan asked to sift all the disciples like wheat or something like that. So that tells us that Satan has to ask before bad things happen to us. Satan has to ask God, and God has to stamp it with his approval. Yes, you can do that bad thing. Probably for my purpose, so this person will turn to me, right? That's why God does all the bad things, so we'll turn to him, right? If you read the Bible, you know what the fuck I'm talking about. If not, then you're lost in the sauce and you're in religion and you can't be helped. All right. So yeah, he fucking owes us something. Not only that, he's a puppeteer. He's a master of puppets. He's pulling all the strings. All the bad shit that happens to us is because of him. And yet we're supposed to love this guy? What? It doesn't make sense. All the suffering throughout the world is all because God just said, okay, Satan, you can go in the Garden of Eden because it's part of my plan. I got to give these humans free will. So all the suffering, it's like, what? What kind of father is that? Like, that's equivalent to saying, yeah, you can go play on freeway traffic because you got to learn sometime that cars are bad. What? And of course we fell because Satan was smarter than us. Of course we fell. Oh, or else, as religious Christian zealots would say, we disobeyed. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. We were coerced. That's all I got. He responded, and for some reason I didn't. Oh, he says, so what does he owe you exactly? And then he goes on to talk about like, oh, we're all just making excuses because we failed, and therefore we're blaming God, right? Like, well, gee, let me think about this for a second. If God's the one who created us, he's the one who arranges our environment, literally our physical environment, as well as allows us to be healthy or not, and it's all part of God's mercy. If you really read the Bible, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you're really well versed in the Bible, because this is all in there, right? It's a mercy if we succeed. It's a mercy if we're still in the church. It's a mercy if we love God. It's all mercy. Right? Oh, so we're just these pitiful humans, and oh, we can do nothing without God, and oh, we're just so bereft of anything good, and oh, we're just so downtrodden and rotten. Okay, maybe we are. And how do we get that way? Because you arranged it, buddy. You put Satan in the Garden of Eden. But yet he doesn't owe us anything? Are you out of your mind? Like, are you outside of your mind? He damn well does owe us something. He screwed everything up. It's his fault. It's his problem. Anyway, not to mention all the promises, dude. Like, not to mention all the times all the promises he made, but he doesn't owe us anything. That's plausible deniability. You are making excuses for him to have an out so that when anything bad happens, you can say, well, it's not God's fault. Yes, it fucking is. It literally says it in the Bible. It alludes to it. It says it. It highlights it.